Hey y'all, welcome to Bugs in the Lip Gloss. This is Whiskey and my great friend Tuki. And again, we're sharing stories of challenges of these warrior women and the journeys of their healing and what they've gone through and how they've gotten to where they are now. And I can't wait to hear Tuki's story also. So, Tuki, if you would please introduce yourself a little better than I did.
Yeah, my name is Tuki, and I'm originally from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And I'm a first generation of immigrant parents from China. Uh, so you want me to keep going? And
Whatever you want to
yeah,
share.
yeah. So I was raised in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, originally. Um, and I didn't know then, but now I do. I was raised by PTSD parents. uh, they're immigrants from China. So people who don't know history, they came from a time of Mao,
Uh-huh.
war-torn China, uh, farmer parents, very strict, very little written on it. But if people who didn't know history, like the soldiers would come and take all the metals so they could make weapons. They would come, raid villages, take food. Uh, if you say one bad word about the government, they'll come and kill you. So
Mhm.
they have real PTSD that I wasn't aware of until I spoke to other. I found that out later. But so anyway, I was the youngest, only female of four older brothers. So if anybody understands history, uh,
Yeah.
the females are not valued.
Hmm.
Um, as is. And it's not that we're not valuable, but that was the message given to my parents at the time of Mao, because the
Uh-huh.
boys were needed to be soldiers, whatever, and we also grew up in a poor, large household of 10, including my grandparents and my uncle. Again, I I have a brief, they don't talk about it, but I think my father escaped first. It's an escape. It's not like,
Right.
oh, you're free to go. It's
Right.
China in the time of Mao in the 60s. And then because he was here, he was able to Canada, and then he was able to get my mother and then my grandparents. It was like it's not a small thing. It was a big ordeal. And then and Montreal is winter. So it's not like they went to Vancouver where there were a lot more Chinese immigrants there, where it was a bigger community and a bigger support system. So on
Mhm.
top of the fact that my parents just wanted to leave, or my father just wanted to leave or escape, um, they went to French Canada, where it's like it's not English is not the second language.
They're not French.
They're not French. So they went from
Right.
Chinese to French, where it's not like English is the primary language, where they're going to be a little bit more supportive.
Hmm.
So that was some other lovely challenges. But anyway, my mother was a rageaholic. I wasn't understanding that until I was much older. And my father was passive aggressive in nature. Um, and I can always remember my parents arguing. I'm witnessing my parents throw things at each other. Uh, it was a toxic and emotionally abusive household where I was often neglected. And it was very interesting when I came to the States. Like people go, oh, you must have been, you're the only girl, you must have been loved. I'm like, no, I came from immigrant parents where the girl is not loved. I mean,
Right.
if I was born in China, I would have been down the river with a nail in
Right.
my head. Like, I'm not kidding. They would put nails in their baby's head just to make sure they actually die, and then they shift them down, like from down the
Hmm.
river. I could have been one of those. Um, but my parents didn't speak English, so they could only work as manual labor, like washing dishes. My mother knew how to sew, so she worked as a seamstress in a warehouse.
Hmm.
So both parents worked, and when they were home, there was arguing. Uh, I did not understand what they were arguing about because they actually used a different dialect when my parents spoke. different than the ones when they spoke to us. So
Right.
people are like, oh, you must, yeah, it's a very, very different. Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
there's different dialects. So culturally, my mother favored my brothers. And at any given time, when something was not right at my home, my brothers would blame me for fill in the blank. And like spilled food or toys on the floor, my mother automatically took their side. And I remember my mother would make me sit at the dinner table and serve everyone dinner, and my bowl remained empty.
Wow.
And now you got to think that if this was present day today in America or in the States, it would, like social services would come type of thing,
Right.
right? Because it isn't normal behavior, but that was my norm to be
Right.
to sit at the table and not eat because my mother was in a bad mood or she
Hmm.
thought I did something. And then she wouldn't even say what it was. She just wouldn't feed me. She didn't go, oh, you left, like she just went, you're just going to not have food. And her words were, you're the youngest and a girl, and I don't have to feed you.
Wow.
And I was raised what we call like a dog pile environment,
Hmm.
meaning it's like everyone for themselves. So that's also started the low self-esteem, poor self-image, uh, that lack of nurturing and poor mindset mentality. And that the people are like, oh, why didn't we just share? It's because she she was kind of like literally starving us.
Hmm.
So if there's food on the table and we're all hungry, it's hard to share because she created an environment um, where you think there would be sharing in a where like okay everybody has something to eat, let's share it. But she created an environment where uh, you kind of almost felt like if that happened, she would lose her lid. Like she was just angry
Hmm.
and so that sharing aspect got lost when it should have been expanded in any
Right.
loving family. And but remember, I'm the female, right? It wasn't like a normal household where you we're if we're all poor, then everybody just shares that slice of bread. It was like, well, you're a girl, like we don't need to share with you,
It
right?
was culturally accepted.
It was culturally accepted, yeah. But in real life, it's not. Like it doesn't
Right.
translate well in this society.
Right.
So I mean, obviously, like I'm just telling you, my brothers don't do well socially.
Hmm.
I can tell. I can just tell because it's ingrained in how they treat people, right? It's
Right.
it's just not a healthy. But anyway, that's them. So, anyways,
But it explains
uh,
the dynamic, so I get it.
yeah, it explains the dynamic now that I'm older and can have a better sense of it. But I doubted myself continuously on many areas of my life. And I figured out in my early teens that I had the ability to sense things and pick up people's thoughts and moods. And I understood it's a safety thing that really, but I really enhanced that intuitive ability that I now have. Um, and at 21, if people don't understand Canada, but like the schooling system's there, but I actually dropped out of university, which is not an easy thing to get into in where I was growing up at one of the universities. And I left Montreal for Vancouver, like I just dropped out of school. And it's by the way, it wasn't easy to get in. I had the grades, and people were like, "You're leaving?" And I went, I can't stay. And I didn't want to be in Montreal because my family was there. And I said,
Right.
if I stay there, I'll always be within a proximal to them. So I actually went and I just that summer, as soon as school ended, um, I packed up whatever I could and I went to Vancouver. And while I was in Vancouver, I told myself that I'm going to reinvent myself since no one knows me. I was like
Right.
21 or something. And I smiled, I laughed, I made friends while backpacking. Like I just went, I'm done. Right. And that's how I got that, like, I'm just going to be me for a second, not have anything. And I stayed there for 14 months before deciding to leave Canada for good and backpack to Southern California. Like I was just like, I'm done. So I hopped on the Green Tortoise. If you don't know, it's an American hippie bus. It used to be in the hippie days. And so I had a then boyfriend drive me to cross the border to Washington to at a bus stop. It wasn't like a real bus stop. It's like at the corner of this and this where the McDonald's is.
Right.
That's your bus. I'm like, we kept looking like there was no, it wasn't like an actual stop. We're like, that's where we're gonna stop and pick you guys up, right?
Right.
So but that's where the adventure started was um and then anyways, I eventually landed in Venice, California. But along the way, because I was just like wide-eyed, adventurous, young, I just met people along the way. It was easy for me, for whatever reason. Because I just said, I, because I think I've always had that
Mm-hmm.
personality of just meeting people. Uh, and but I struggled financially, right?
Right.
Because now I understand, how because I had the modeling of my parents where money was always an issue, but also they were immigrants and they didn't speak English, but they didn't try. They
Right.
didn't try to speak English. They didn't try to speak French. Whereas I remember my uncle, my mother's brother, spoke English. I mean, pretty well. He learned English basically, and he even learned French. And then he made sure his kids learned English and French. Like he made sure of it. Whereas my parents, they didn't even play with us. They didn't even take us to the park. My parents
Right.
didn't even teach me how to ride a bike. A neighbor taught me how to ride a bicycle when I
Right.
was like, yeah. And it wasn't like he taught me how, like I was already maybe 8, 9, or 10, where a neighbor finally said, I'm going to teach you how to ride a bike. And it was in the summer. Like, and that's old to ride a bike, apparently, right? I think you're supposed to learn when you're like 5 or 6 or,
Yeah,
or
5 or 6 is
something, right?
what I was gonna say.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what I mean. Like, they didn't in, engage with us to develop our own internal interests that
Mm-hmm.
could carry us. And um, so I was learning that as I was traveling, and on my own. But I finally said, I mean, I was here under the radar for many years, so that had its own lovely struggles. So that was what where the interesting thing is. For me to stay in the States, I said, okay, I better become a student, and I decided to study acupuncture. Now, why did I choose that? I could have gone to done so many things. I said, well, I have an affinity to serve.
Mm-hmm.
That just came naturally to me to be of service. And I was just interested in a different way of thinking and helping and healing. Um, that's all. I was just an interest to that. But so I said, okay, I got to figure out what to do. I'm not going back to Canada, and the only way to be here is, so many. There's only so many options. And then I said, okay, I'll be a student. But in between that, I um, I always found relationships or men um, that would cheat on me or take my money. Like I just see the pattern, right? Or steal my money or partner up with people who took my money. Like somehow I was always that was my pattern. And
Right.
so one of my earlier boyfriends, when I was in that stage of like, how do I stay here? How do I be here? And then I guess I'll be a student. So while I was actually a student, if anybody understands uh, what it is to, when you're not a citizen, it's like I was basically working under the table a little bit, right?
Right.
And and I wasn't doing anything strange. It was just stuff. But one of the things I did do um, was I also became a massage therapist, and I was working under someone else. His name, it doesn't matter,
Right.
but it was a real clinic, and I had great friends there. It was one of my fondest memories. Wonderful. Most of them were women who are also want to have this passion to help and be of service. But the boyfriends that I had at the time, uh, I didn't realize he was that controlling.
Mm-hmm.
And um, he said he started to do little things that I didn't realize was an actual thing. Was like, oh, are you really going to school? And I'm like thinking, well, yeah, like I'm Chinese. Why would I not go to school? It's almost like,
I'm like,
like,
there's a stereotype there, but I'm living it.
yeah, right. And at the same time, like, what a strange thing to say. Like, are you going to school? Like, what am I like? I'm not a teenager skipping school. Like, I'm actually paying for this. It's a different
Right.
mindset too. And then, um, and then I had all these little jobs that because I was working under someone else that were like all different clinics. And I also worked at a restaurant in the back end doing administrative, um, like all these little things to just sort of support myself,
Mm-hmm.
um, because legally I wasn't supposed to be really working, but I was doing real work. And then it's like he was like, "Are you really going to work? Are you really going to?" I was like, "And who are you going? Who are you working with?" And I'm thinking, well, come by and meet these people. Like I didn't get it right. What was happening? He was slowly trying to get me away from my support group, my friends. Um, and then um, and then this person didn't live where I live. I live by the beach in Santa Monica. He lived in Thousand Oaks, which is like an hour and a half away
Right.
by car. And uh, he was starting to go, well, are there any guys there? And I'm thinking, you mean at school? Yeah, there's lots of students. And what do you do with them? It's like I sit next to them in class and we might study together. Like what like it was a
Like,
lot
what are
of
you getting at?
like right, right.
Yeah.
Right. And then so it was a lot more of that and a lot more of that. Well, I really don't think you should be, why are you going to work? Like, well, why do you have so many jobs? Because I'm spending less time with him because I had like three part-time jobs and I was in school full time and he lived an hour away. And I said, well, the only thing I can do is, uh, well, you can come, but you have more time than me. So you can see me when I, here, whatever,
Right.
in Santa Monica. And then, and it wasn't a long relationship, it was like less than a year, but I was trying to get out of it at some point. And then um, I remember one time I said to him, like, I think let's just take a break because I got to focus on school. And he wouldn't stop calling me. And and then I remember, uh, and he go, I said, a break means you don't call me. Like I need to just. And he goes, well, what are you doing? Like, why are you seeing someone else? And I'm like,
Oh, you
no,
definitely go there.
yeah, I was just like, I just need to focus. I have not been focusing on my studying or my school because this is a lot of driving back and forth and it's making me tired. And and I remember, I think he was getting more of that, like more like, well, I don't want you going out with these two friends that I worked with at the clinic in Santa Monica, uh, a massage clinic. And he goes, well, she's single, they're single. You guys gonna talk to guys? I'm like, not necessarily, but like we're just gonna have dinner, go to a movie, like just
Like,
just to
pal.
connect. Yeah, right. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Right? Like, this is really weird. And then he was like, well, I don't want you hanging out with her. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to not hang out. Like, but it was a lot of that, a lot of that. And he
Right.
goes, well, if you have time to go with her, you should just come drive over and see me. But, an hour's drive after school or work, it's just a lot. And
And the
then,
drive back.
and the drive back Saturday morning because I worked Saturday mornings
Right.
and he didn't want me to work. So he was trying to make me not have friends and not have money.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was getting more of that. And he was angry about it. It wasn't like a simple loving, it was belligerent. And oh, I forgot to mention, I was living in one particular place, and I was moving because I was just trying to find a place that I can afford and not have roommates because it was disrupting my studies.
Right.
Uh, but I remember when we were I was living in this one place that had like five roommates. Like I had a room with, it was a place, we were
Like a boarding
students. We were
house,
all,
basically.
no, it was just students with a lot of students.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, it was like even the what do you call it? The upstairs without a wall was rented.
Oh, the
Not
attic?
the den. Not an attic, but like a den type of thing without a
Okay.
wall. It was even that was rented, right? It was just all of us was, you know,
Packed in there.
packed in there. And and when we were kind of dating, I he did like a he thought it was fun to flip me over onto my stomach and put his knee on my back like a George Floyd. And he
Wow.
was laughing and I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my God. But then he heard the front door open because I was by where my room was at the time. It was a front, I was by the front door. And then,
Right.
he heard my roommates walk in. So he got off and but he thought it was funny
Hmm.
to, I'm small, I'm 5'2". And yeah, and I'm like going, this is not normal,
Yeah,
right?
there's
And I'm
something
going,
wrong here.
there's something wrong here. I was like, he thought that was funny to put his knee on my back and I couldn't move. Like,
Right.
but because someone was coming in and I was thinking, okay, how do I get out? And then every time I was like, that's why I was like, let's take a break. And then I was moving and he goes, I'm going to help you move. So he knew where I was living in the second place. Um, but I kept going, I got to study it. I was kind of not wanting more. And and then I remember one time I was with the friends that I worked with, and then there was a third person, a fourth person, a male. We were in Venice. I think it was like brunch or something. Like it's got
Right.
to be a Saturday because my other friend worked during the week, so it had to be like a Saturday or Sunday. And then he calls me, and goes, "I know you're on a date," and I went, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You were with this these two friends, which he knew he's met them, and who was that guy?" I'm like, what are you talking about?
And how do you know this?
Because he was following me,
Oh.
and he goes, "If I think you're cheating, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you." And all I can think is like, okay, this is it.
Hmm.
This is like beyond. Uh, this is like not normal, right?
Yeah, right.
And uh so that's when I went, hey, you know what? This isn't what I said, this isn't working. I really need to focus on school. Uh, and I got to work. I got, I got exams, whatever, right? My grades are gonna fall, da 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 da, right? And that's when he lost it, right? Then he was going, I want all the money I spent on you back. Give me back all the money I spent on you. I'm thinking, you joke, like, you want the money you spent on me?
Right.
How are we calculating that, right? But then, um, so it wasn't just over. He knew the places I worked and said, I know she's not supposed to be working. If she's still there, I'm calling immigration, and I'm going to report all of you. I couldn't go to that work. The restaurant, I couldn't go there because he called them too. I worked at a chiropractic clinic once a week. He called them too. Exactly. So then what happened was a lot of and then at that time I was sleeping at two of these friends' couches, like I alternated. Like
Hmm.
I slept there. I think there might have been a third one. So that I wasn't always in my apartment that he knew where I was living. I would kind of alternate between these couches just for a couple of days during the week, just so
Right.
I wasn't alone. And it kind of paused, it stopped. And then I went back to one of the restaurants just to like, I think the owner wanted to make sure I was okay and get me breakfast. So I literally went there to eat breakfast. He literally called that afternoon and said, I know she's still working there. She goes, what are you talking about? So she was just like, she was just here to eat breakfast. And she called me right away
Right.
and said, I'm like, what? He goes, that jerk called that afternoon and said, I know you're, he said he knew you were there. He thought I was working. I said, she's just eating here. It's a restaurant.
Right.
Uh, and
And
now he,
you have no legal recourse because you're illegal. So at
well,
that
at the
point,
time, well, I could have filed. I was so afraid,
uh-huh.
and I did not have a lot of, I didn't have the, I had friends who understood. And also this was before me too, but
Right.
I actually still could have filed a restraining order,
Oh,
but
okay.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that, and they didn't know that. This was in the 90s. They didn't
Right.
know that. I didn't know that. So I lived in that type of fear for 5 years.
Wow.
And and it was it, and even the one of the clinics that I worked at in Santa Monica, I had, I mean, I love these people to death. At the time, they all gave up one, like one client for me to have, just so that I could have like maybe 3 or 4 massages, just so
Right.
I can, and under their name. So they would just like give me $20, whatever it was. And that was not that little back then. Like
Right.
that included the tip. They just said, at least so I can have something. He called and it's like, Spear not be there. Da, da, da. I'm checking. And so we all had a discussion as a group going, we just don't think, it's not that they didn't want to do this for me. They were like, we just don't think it's safe. And
Right.
we all had to agree that it's like, it's not even safe for me, even though it was not under my name. Like we're talking about all these ladies that all gave up one shift, like 1 hour for me to have that week.
Right.
And they were like, it's just not, even the manager knew. They was like, we just don't think it's safe. It's not that we don't want you. It's just not safe because he's
Right.
calling, like he's
Not for
randomly calling.
anybody. You don't know
Right,
what he's going to do to who.
right. And even if it's empty, we don't know that, right? Because he's already threatened to beat the crap out of me. And
Right.
then I remember a girlfriend from Montreal came to visit me and she met him. And I called her and I said, I want you to know that he's stalking me and he's threatening me. She goes, oh, you're just exaggerating. Because again, no one could understand, goes, oh, you're taking it the wrong way. Because
Defies the logic.
right, but the friends that were in my immediate surrounding understood that it wasn't fake.
Right.
And but when you talk about it, remember this is the 90s. It's like, oh, he's just blowing. It's like, no, he's stalking me and he's threatening me. She goes, well, yeah, he called me and asked me how I was doing. I'm like, why are you talking to him? I just told you he's threatening me and he's stalking me. He just wants to know where I am by asking you because he knows we were at the time best friends. I
Right.
said, please don't tell him anything. And she goes, oh, you're just imagining. And I'm like, oh my God. And so I had to stop talking to her
Right.
because I can't take a chance of her telling him where I might be, even
Right.
if it's staying at my friend's couch. So so this went on for quite a bit. I even and that's when I learned to get a mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have a landline anymore at my original place. And I finally found another apartment. And people go, "Oh, I should have moved in 3 seconds." Well, I live in a very, it's not that simple to move. I gotta find something that I can afford to live in.
Right.
Uh,
There's so
and
many
and
logistics to figuring out where to find home base again.
right, right. And so it took like 6, 8 months before I found another apartment. And everyone's like, oh, you could just rent a room. It's like, no, if somebody's stalking me, the last thing I'm going to do in my head, right, was to live in a roommate situation and put that person at risk.
Right.
That was my thinking. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I can't tell you that, but for me, it felt right to not engage in someone else because it's not fair. I wouldn't like it if I have a roommate and found out there was a stalker and they put me in danger. Like I had to just be realistic about not imposing that on someone else. So I finally found another place to live. I got a private number because at the time we had landlines, you could make it private. It doesn't have to be public. And I thought I was fine. But then the thing is, he knew where my mailbox was and he would send me letters. God, he would just send me letters there. So he didn't know where I was physically living, but he knew my mailbox and would send me letters. So I wasn't over. It wasn't like he's sending me every day, but every few months I would get a letter from him at my mailbox.
Thank God it
And
wasn't
then
during social media. I know some ladies now that are dealing with this, and it's a whole different world dealing with a stalker and social media. Like
exactly,
crazy.
exactly. Yeah. And again, this was pre Me Too. And so what that drove me underground. It drove me to scrub toilets, dog sit, house sit. And at the time it was fine because I was a student and I could get that then. I just think it'd be harder now. But
Right.
um, and I mean I had a friend, thank goodness I had a good friend that at the time he had back surgery. So I was there a couple of days a week to help him out. And he paid me. And I think he didn't know that I was being stalked. I think he would have killed him. That
Quite possibly.
but it was just he was just so generous. Like, yeah, because I'm not gonna have a nurse, but I need that help.
Right.
So I did that. And forever grateful. He just didn't know what I was going through. He just, oh, I know you need money, but I didn't think he didn't know why, right?
Mm,
Because I was so embarrassed, I'm so ashamed. I didn't want another, oh, I'm making it up, I'm exaggerating.
right.
And then one time he in my new place that I'm at, um, he figured out my home number and called me. And he wouldn't stop calling me for a week until I had to call Verizon and go, I want you to disconnect my phone. I'm done.
That's crazy. So what finally stopped all this?
Well, one, I disconnected my landline.
Yeah.
I think, but 5 years has passed. He's finally sent me a letter going, oh, I'm getting married. And I don't know if it was true or not, but we have to assume it's true.
And why would you care?
Well, I'm going, thank God, because now he's got someone else to torture. He's got
Right.
someone else. He's obsessed with someone else. I mean, it took him to date someone else, to get married to someone else, to send me a letter going, what? I just tell you I'm happy. I'm like, dude, you know,
Thanks. Thanks.
thank you, thanks for letting me off the hook. Poor wife, but I'm sure he did get married, but I think that's what made me go, got someone
Right.
else to to obsess and control. Not that I want that for her, but
Right.
but
That's
I
the pattern,
still
though. They just pick the next victim. It's not something we can control with who's next behind us.
no. But the thing is, I lived in that constant fear of being playing small, right?
Mhm.
Those 5 years taught me to hide, like even more before, different than the cultural hide. It
Right.
was because I didn't want my name out there. Even when I got my acupuncture license, I didn't want an office because I was thinking, what if he finds me if I got an office? So for like almost 2 years, I still didn't really get an office because I was afraid he'd find me. It wasn't necessarily logical, but I was still living in that mindset of I don't want to play big.
Right.
I don't want to put myself out there. So it was never like totally successful because I was like going because I got used to not being out there.
I
I
actually
I
I actually have some women in my group that are going through this right now. They've done name changes, they're in safe houses, they're in all these things. And it's a fear. There's a fear of moving forward because they're that stalker still has control of them even when they're not around. And so if you could tell them, I mean, this is really important. Like I literally know people right now. What changed it? What got you to move past that? What did you do?
um because I have such an unusual name,
Uh-huh.
that Tuki is an unusual, and I'm not going to say what my last name is,
Yeah,
but
no.
I also got, I also, which I don't care now, right? But I grew up with so much racism. Until
Right.
you also have to forget, we forget that, but I grew up with a lot of racism because I'm not white or
Right.
French. So I grew up on top of that. What happened to me with this stalker boyfriend or ex-boyfriend was we would get crank calls in Montreal from people making fun of us because we were listed on the, like, my father didn't understand that we can have a private number.
Right.
For those who don't remember, we used to have something
Yeah.
called the white pages,
Yeah.
called a phone book.
Yeah, we had phone books, not contact
We
our phone.
we had phone books, we had dial.
Yeah.
So uh, we would get a lot of crank calls, um, making fun of us on, and that was the norm. Like the phone would
Right.
ring and it could easily be a crank caller. And my father did not understand that he should really just take the name off the freaking telephone book.
Right. Go
Like you could just
unlisted. That was called being
go
unlisted.
right, but again, that would require the understanding of how it works
The
and
language, the
speaking
concept.
and speaking and speaking English. Remember, my parents grew up with you don't go against the government or you get killed or
Right.
you could get raped or get your hand cut off. And that's not a fake thing.
Right.
And one of the things that I didn't realize how how scary it was. One of my teachers at school from acupuncture, um, he pretended to be a poor farmer. You could tell them he was a doctor, or he knew he'd get his hands chopped off.
Right.
So there's a real sense of it wasn't a fake. We grew up in the
It's a
West is
survival
very
mode.
the
It's
West is
universal
very
survival mode.
cushioned. People
Right.
go, oh, it's so poor. It's like you guys still get water. You know,
Right.
like no one's gonna come. The troops will not come and raid your home and steal your metal and chop off your hand for saying bad about the government.
Right.
There's a lot of freedom here, and it's not like there. If you say something bad, your neighbor can report you because they'll get extra food,
Right. Yeah.
right? It's
My family
because
moved
they're
here. My family moved here to get away from the Russian Revolution. So, and I understand like a lot of the things that they went through. Like I was told, if people went against the government and stuff like that, they just disappear in the middle of the night. You'd have no idea where they went. They just vanish, you know. So, but when you decided that you've had enough, or he decided that he'd had enough, I guess, and then you went through that 2 years of that fear, and then what did you do going forward? Like once you did you just finally release it, the fear itself, and move forward, or how did that happen?
well, I had a session with a therapist about my name. One was about my name because there was
Uh-huh.
fear. There was a double fear. My I There's an inner childhood fear that my name created racism,
Right.
right? And then also there's the fear that if I put myself out there, that he would find me, even though it's long gone.
Right.
Not long ago, but it was that kind of like it was like a reminder. Like I also had a lot of high-end clients that was in the entertainment industry. And finally the conversation was kind of like, what do you really want? Right. So the question is, I need to move forward. I want not financial success, all that stuff. And then, and it's sort of like, okay, do you want to change your name? Right. And I'm like, because she said, because it's you. Your name is you. So if
Mm-hmm.
you think you can change your name and be someone else, not you, not be the healer, not be this thing. Um, so like it was like a whole conversation about um if you call me Mary, can I still be the healer? Can I still da 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 da? And can you still do those service? Yes, right? Yes, I
Right.
can. I can be, my name has nothing to do with my capacity to heal and be of service.
Right.
But then understand, like, it was a lot of conversation, like, do I change my name, da, 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 for safety, da, da, da. And I finally went, but your name is one unique. So in the world of promoting and out in the world, it's a unique name.
Right. It's
Mary is
yeah,
everywhere. Right. So your name is different and it's going to be much more memorable
right.
to 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 say Tuki the healer than
Mhm.
Mary the healer. There's 1,000 Marys. Which Mary? There's only one Tuki with that name spelling, all that stuff. But also, um, it also my name tells the story that uh, I'm a I'm a first generation immigrant. I
Right.
come from a place of understanding pain and suffering.
Right.
Of course, Mary can too, whoever, whatever people's names are, but it's much more immediate and people can relate. And there's a humanness to that.
Right.
So change it, yes, and still give that, or just accept that with that name comes that love and compassion,
Right.
right? And also me, and then with the story of the stalker, with the story of the racism, come with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Because
I went,
that's not the only part of your story, right? Like there's so much more besides that. That's not it. And I think sometimes we identify with the traumas and we forget about everything else. And I'm not just saying you, I'm saying in general.
right. In the breakthrough aha moment was like, let me put my name a little bit more out there. Now I'm not in, I've got to be taught how to do that because that's business and all that stuff. But now I'm not afraid to say my name and be out there
Right.
because it's,
Obviously.
yeah, it's also my journey and my compassion, my love, and and it, the the things that happen with, it's all part of me.
Mhm.
So, and embrace that. So if you're living in active fear, that's different, right? But when it passes, we have to remind ourselves that want, like, to just be out there.
Mhm.
Because I just played small out of the habit of fear, and that habit of fear is more likely to keep you in that cycle of repeating that story.
And that's what I've told a few of these ladies. And I'm like, even if he hasn't messed with you in forever, if you're still hiding and you're still locking down because of that fear, he's still winning. You're
Well,
still
more than
giving,
that,
well, you're still giving all your power away, whether to him or something else.
to
And
someone else that will take your power. But
yeah,
more importantly, I'm like, if I'm the more, I'm not saying famous is not the right word, but the more I'm
no,
um, known, well, it's going to be crazy to come at me anyway.
it changes you, right? You're like, no,
Right. It's like, yeah, well, people know who I am. Do you want to be
right.
that person to come at me?
Yeah,
That's okay. Because now I have a, like, now I'm less afraid to go, I will file a restraining order. I mean, this was over 20 years ago, but
right,
now I'm not afraid to go, I need help. I am going to call
right,
the police. I am going to file a report. At least I'm going to start noting this legally, you
right.
know,
Yeah, documenting
making,
everything.
I'm documenting it. And you know what? Um, I get, like, it's like social media's got like it's like it could help you or could hurt you.
Hmm.
Um, and I get that, women need to be safe because they have families. But find a support system. Like, I was lucky to have couches that I could sleep in,
Right,
that randomly. And this was went on for months. It wasn't like a couple of days. That every week I slept on this person's couch for one night and another person's couch for one night. and even if it was just two different couches a week, it was still breaking the pattern until I could figure it out.
Well,
And also,
oh, go
mhm,
ahead. As
no, I
and
was gonna say,
you also learn that there's other people that are there and support you. Like it's the polar opposite of
yes,
all the
yes,
other things that you'd been taught. Because I'm actually going through that myself, so it's you see the goodness and the humanity and the compassion and the empathy from other people that you hadn't had before. So
yes, and it's
and you're
important
learning
to
it in
give you,
process.
you get to have that hope that you're not alone.
Right.
Okay. And again, you're doing it post Me Too. I was doing this in my 20s, pre Me Too, when I had people said I'm exaggerating.
Yeah. Oh, trust me, I still have the haters.
Right, right. And I don't think it's haters. It's just they're going, this can't be real. It's like, yeah, it's real.
Yeah.
But it's important to have find the friends or the support that will take you in for the couch or um or buy you lunch,
I actually
whatever it
go to
is.
hippie camps now. So when you said you went to the hippie bus, I'm like,
They
ooh,
are the best.
the
They are the most
best.
supportive. They are the
Oh,
most supportive.
first one I showed up at, they're like, welcome home. And it has been nothing but unconditional love and it's been
Yeah.
amazing.
I'm not gonna kid you. People go, wow, it's like, yeah. And I lived, oh, by the way, when I first came to California, I was living out of my backpack for 2 years. So
Mhm.
oh, and that was another thing. Like when I was being stalked, I went back to that method of I always had a to-go bag
Right,
in my books in my backpack. So if he was coming, I could just grab a bag and get in my car or get to a bus stop. Like
right.
I lived in that
Could
in my head,
disappear.
yeah, that I was able to run off. I literally had a bag packed with like shorts, t-shirts, underwear, bra, toothbrush, like a travel bag. Like I literally had it to go.
Right,
And anyway, fast forward is that and I still had relationships with men that took my money, that cheated. Even the most recent um one situationship where he reneged on a lot of our agreements, verbal agreements, for me to be safe and comfortable in this situationship.
right,
A lot of broken promises. And this was someone I knew for a long time as a friend. And I learned to use my voice to go, hey, can we do this? It reminders of, you know, we said this, and that. And he heard us as I was trying to cross the line of the situationship. And and it, the old me would have stayed or not used my voice to say, hey, in a very loving way, of course,
this is not
we
okay.
or yeah, we agreed to this, or can I have that? Or I would like this. Can we please? Right. And it still didn't get heard or acknowledged uh, or well received.
Mhm.
And while and so you're going, oh, what's the success? The success is that I used my voice and asked, and
Right,
I didn't want to be a doormat.
right. And
And
that's a hard habit to break. It
yeah, right,
is.
it's right. Learning to ask, and if anybody's done, I've been in Al-Anon, that I was basically looking for milk and eggs at the hardware store. That's an expression used
Yeah.
in Al-Anon a lot. And so it's nothing wrong with asking for what I was asking, and it was appropriate. It's just I was asking in the wrong place.
And sometimes there comes a point where we have to just start asking and stop asking and say, this is my boundary. This is what I need. This is where I need to go with this. And if not, then this situationship or relationship just isn't going to happen. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
however,
a spot
yeah,
where we have to stop asking permission to meet our own needs.
yeah, exactly. We have to just learn to use our voice and what's appropriate and whatever your personality is.
Right.
But and so people go, where's the growth? It's like the growth is I'm asking. I'm aware of it.
For you.
And also I have the ability to um I understand people have days, weeks, months that are not we all can't be 100% perfect, happy, whole, da 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 da. But I literally got pushed to a place where it's like, I don't think there's a friendship anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the sadness too in my heart that the friendship got ruined along the way. And it's not what I
Yeah,
wanted.
but you didn't ruin it.
I know I didn't, but it's
Right.
just still there that being in a situationship with someone uh that where I was saying, hey, I'm asking or reminding or whatever it is, and all this person heard was I was nagging, bitching, da 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 da, and that's not what it was. It was me going, we really need to be more respectful and kind, or that the agreements that we made are not being agreed upon, or it's not coming through, and I'm going, hey, reminder. And so that alone is, even like, fast forward from wherever you're coming from, it's okay to remind,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's how it matters how you say it. It's okay to ask. Remember to be, what is it? Say what you mean what you say, but just don't say it meanly, right?
Right. Because that doesn't
Um,
do any good either.
huh?
I said saying
No,
it
right,
really doesn't do any good either.
right. And I've had a lot of therapy, and so I know to go, I feel, fill in the blank. And with this situationship, it didn't work.
Right.
And I'm thinking there's a, like, and people are like, why are you staying? It's like, well, I now I understood through thinking back. It's like I was staying because I was feeling like I'm trying to salvage the friendship, and it's just not there. That
Yeah.
at this current time, the friendship's not there, and
Mm-hmm.
so I am grieving the loss of not just separate from the situationship. I'm also grieving the loss that the friendship is not there, because I'm going, how this person treated me was not even a friend.
Right. And, and
And
and you
mhm,
said you're very intuitive because of your past and things like that, and empathic, and I understand that too.
correct.
And I think sometimes we, I don't know how the right word, it's not romanticizing, but it's attaching to um the prospect, or we see the potential in how things are or how things were and where we thought that landed us in the whole thing. And we kind of we attach to that. So then we actually have to agree, we have to grieve our own process of what we thought it was going to be and what it was going to continue versus what the reality is. Like, because
Yeah, that too. Yeah,
we
right.
get
But
so invested in that potential.
well, there's the potential, but there's also the me understanding people and human nature,
Mhm.
that people get to have, even like,
They change too.
but people can't always be 100% perky, happy, kumbaya. That's just not realistic.
It's not.
and and also, as a friend, I need to give you that space to not be in that great space when we
Right.
spend time together, and because I want that for me.
Right.
So in the process of when it's a situationship, um it just looks like I'm being a doormat, when it wasn't. I was just giving this person space to be
Right.
whoever he is. He
Right.
doesn't have to come to in front of me perfect, happy, whole, smiling, joking. No one can. I can't. You can't.
Right.
But because I give that space, uh, it just got interpreted, in my opinion, my experience. I think it got interpreted as, oh, I get to be emotionally unavailable or abusive or whatever. That's not what
Right.
it means. It just means I'm giving you space to be you.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely misinterpreted. So,
Yeah.
going through all these trials and journeys and this healing journey and all the things that you've learned, and you've obviously are now successful, and you've got a lot of things figured out in your head for through healing and everything else. What does this look like in the future for you? Like, what are you doing with?
Well, a lot of it is, um, stepping up for me, now I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, don't look at boundaries as a negative. I see it as this is where I want to meet you. This is where I'm comfortable meeting you, regardless of the new friendships, business, uh, personal relationships, friend, like it's not a wall.
Right.
It's this is where I'm comfortable meeting you. Please meet me here,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
And and when I was with this person, it was kind of like this, eh, 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 like a little bit, and because it was so little bit every time,
Ignore
I'm
the
like,
rooster.
huh? Yeah.
If you can
So
hear it, ignore it.
no, that's okay. I don't. But now I'm understanding that to give the reminders faster.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, this was my space. Even if it's an inch in or 2 inches, go, okay, you're an inch in. I'm just letting you know you're an inch in. I'm a little uncomfortable. It's an inch in. I maybe you didn't mean to, but I'm just letting you know that you're an inch in. You could do it nicely, just like that. Oh, you're an inch
Right.
into my uncomfortable space.
So
Uh,
you're holding your boundaries stronger.
yeah, but again, I don't want to call it boundaries because I'm learning to reverb
Right.
everything. This is the space I want to meet you at.
Right.
This is my comfortable space that I want to meet you at.
Awesome.
Right? So when
Right.
you say because boundaries have negativity and it's not real, it's just nothing has meaning except for the meaning you give it. So now
Right.
I'm going to word it as this is my comfortable space and this is where I want to meet you and please meet me there and I'm going to meet you at your comfortable space.
Right.
Remind me, let me know when I cross your comfortable space and I will remind you or let you know when you cross my comfortable
It's
space.
holding a mutual respect.
Hopefully. And now I've learned being in situationship, and I asked the question, if it's a situationship, what does respect mean to you? How does it translate?
Right.
Because when we always say respect yourself, well, what does it mean? What are
All
you
our
referring to?
Yeah, all our perceptions are different.
Right. So now I'm going to say, and like when I do the counseling, I go, what does that mean to you? Describe it.
Right. Absolutely. So, and you're talking about the counseling and things like here, this, and you told me before we started recording too, that you do the acupuncture and guided
Mhm.
meditation and things like that.
Yeah. And also a neurofeedback practitioner.
And
So that really helped.
awesome. And what were you saying you were gonna, the women, you were making an offer to the ladies in my women's
Yes.
group.
Yes. I would like to give a couple of complimentary sessions of guided meditations. And mine is always themed on a healing or self-esteem. Um, and then working with removing a blockage or a fear, then you can ask for what you want because we've lost that capacity,
Right.
especially when we've lived in fear.
Right.
And I created these meditations for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh yeah. So and now that I've been teaching meditation, I realized like, wow, it's not just me that it's like people are in need of understanding that when you ask from fear, you get more fear.
Absolutely.
When you remove that, even if it's for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're coming from a place of calm and you ask for what you want, it's better received. And also, you're teaching your brain that you can have calmness.
Right. Instead of getting
Be-
lost in the chaos that you're used to.
right. And the more you teach your brain that you can be calm and ask, it's your spirit changes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So as we're wrapping this up, I want to
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time and sharing your story. And I'm just so happy to see that you're where you're at and then you didn't have any more stalker crazy issues. And then I will get your information and about the, we'll contact each other. And if you sign into my women's group, those meditation options and all that will be available to you if you're in my ladies group. And so that will all be in the show notes. And then if you'd like to support my ministry to continue helping women with their journey and showing the journeys that women are on, all that will be in the show notes also. Thank you, Tuekay, so much for joining me today. I really just, I'm so glad to finally meet you. And thank you everyone for joining. Cough, cough. Thank you everyone for joining us, and keep on rocking.